What's up, humans, and welcome to a new Psicoactivo. Today's episode has been a long time in the making, at least nearly a year, because one of my guests today was already on the show, and he was one of the people that opened my eyes to a lot of what's happening in the UFO disclosure world and ufology in general. And the other one has been one of my good friends since we started hanging out, and he was the reason that I'm part of the KGRA family. So I am very, very happy to welcome authors of Rendlesham Signals from the Threshold, a hidden race for UAP technology. Book one, Mr. Toby Martinez and Mr. John Burroughs. Welcome, gentlemen. How are you?
How's it going, Pavel?
Great to have you again, John, and great to have you again too, Toby, because we have done an episode before about that rock. Do you remember? That was really cool.
Roca Interstellar.
Yeah, but you guys just released this book, man, and it's already one of the best sellers. And I went through it in a little under a couple of hours, and a lot of the things that you write there. First of all, I want to tell you, I kind of thought that you guys were gonna right off the bat start naming names and saying what you guys know about this whole movement of disclosure. But I was really happy to see the whole historical context and some of the terms that you guys used that I'm on the trail of, because a lot of this technology that is being talked about here has to do with frequencies. And that's, I guess, the first part of my interview that I want to talk to you guys about. Why is frequency so important in these technologies, and what made you go down that route initially? Whoever wants to take it.
Go ahead, Toby. You can start.
Well, okay, so the whole frequency thing I wasn't super aware about until, like I said, and I've told you before, Pavel, I'm the same as you. John's opened my eyes to a lot of this stuff. He's had me researching things that I had no idea were even connected to the phenomenon. So really, John's what got us down that path.
And John, what made you go down that path besides the obvious encounter that you had on Rendlesham?
Well,
because yeah, tell me.
I could start with this. Okay, back in 2009, I started with the idea of trying to get some people together because it was coming up on 30 years. Just let's get together and talk about it. I hadn't done a ton of research on it. I talked to a guy by the name of Chuck DeCaro, who we talk about in the book, and he had told me about certain things to look at and start researching. I met a guy in DC that worked on radars that at a dinner, and he told me the same things we described happened to them when they were operating a particular radar system. And he said the system's been declassified, but what's in it hasn't, but you could look it up and start following it from there. Followed up with DeCaro. Then I got sick. Then some other people showed up in my lives, like Kit Green, and some other people started talking about terahertz rate, radiation, and some of the other things. Then I met a guy by the name of James Warrow, and you put that all together, shake it all up, and you started uncovering different things that relate to going forward. From back in 1980, what was sitting outside the back gate, what they were researching there, which they call Rendlesham the British Roswell. Well, it's also, Rendlesham is the British Area 51, because that area, if you know anything about the area, you'll know what they were working on, including at the time when the incident happened, and years later, I still didn't know, they were working on SDI right outside the back gate, which involves all kinds of technology, including satellites, drones, radar technology, and everything else. So the long answer is, putting it all together, you start to see these things add up. Never mind, you have people like Lou Alzando talk about the Havana syndrome and different things like that. Kit Green came out and publicly said, I've been injured by radiation and frequency. Well, actually, he never said weapons, but he said frequency, some kind of frequency. So you put that all together, then you start seeing a bigger picture. Now, let me be clear to your audience about something.
Yeah.
If you want to go in and look at this first book of 3 and look for the aliens are coming from Zeta Reticuli, or anything like that, which again, I can't say that there isn't more to the overall are we alone or not than what I've looked at. All I'm saying is this leads down the path of what we encountered in Rendlesham, some of the things that are going on today that you're seeing in the skies, and what I believe because of the people involved in this, to the stars, and the fact now that I've just come to learn the big money's starting to come into UAP technology is what we dealt with and where we're going with the UAP end of it. Whether or not there's ships coming from somewhere else or the aliens are among us or whatever, that's a whole different animal. I don't need to debate it. I'm not arguing with people that what they want to believe. I'm just telling you what research that I've done with Toby, James Worrell, and other people, including people inside government, physicists, and everything else, where what UAP it possibly is and how it affects us and where they're going with it, and what we were dealing with back in 1980.
And I would like to point out just real quick for a historical context. As John said, Rendlesham Forest is, considered the Roswell of Britain, also the Area 51. That area is known going back hundreds of years for strange phenomenon happening. Mysterious lights in the sky, mysterious, I believe, deaths, like people washing up on shore nearby. So it's an area that was already ripe with high strangeness. So it's just kind of overlaps with, like you said, they're experimenting in an area that already has all this stuff happening. So that's just to me.
Well, yeah, there is more to it. Andrew Pike, who was down there during our event, was a guy that was researching a known phenomenon in the area. And he said in his own book, in his own words, he went down there looking at one thing and it all got wrapped up into two different things, including UFOs and everything else. There's another guy, I can't think of his name, is Paul. I can't think of his last name, but he says the same thing. UAPs are different than what we've been groomed for aliens and alien technology.
Yeah. And that place, Rendlesham, reminds me of a place near my house. It's called the Zone of Silence, they call it. And it's a place where I think, just like Rendlesham, there is some kind of an electromagnetic anomaly going on there with frequencies that makes everything go haywire. And in that place where I'm telling you about, there's plants that grow there that don't grow anywhere else. There's animal species that are nowhere else to be found, only there. And I guess it has to do with that, with frequency. So that was really interesting to me, and that was something that I've been thinking about too. But yeah, well, over a year and a half since I started this, I started thinking, obviously, as anybody would, curious about this, that maybe they are aliens from another planet. And right now, I can't tell you that I found evidence that points towards that, but there is a lot of overwhelming evidence that the U.S. has been engaging in research into different types of frequencies and what people call scalar physics and cold fusion and all this. And I was really happy to read the book because you guys go into that quite a bit. And I just want to show you guys an image. I took a few screenshots. I hope that's okay with you guys.
Yeah.
But it goes like this, and I found it really interesting. According to multiple sources, Rendlesham triggered the launch of an investigation dubbed ECHO Protocol, a joint US-UK operation to determine whether UAP could interface with military hardware, influence neurological states, expose classified weapons, size to remote observation. And this operation will, while never publicly acknowledged, allegedly included cognitive testing of involved personnel. I think this part is really interesting. And this is something that I've seen in other places being reported, but erroneously, as far as I'm concerned, because they're already talking about psychic spies and psionic assets. I want to hear your guys' take on this. What do you think about this reporting? And what do you think about this influence in neurological states? I want to hear from you.
Toby, you can go first. You can go first every time. I'll follow. And how's that?
Okay. Well, in relation to, we know people that are exposed to the phenomenon are believed to have, I don't know if you call it a remapping of the brain, but obviously there's some effect to like the pineal gland and some other things like that. As far as the whole psionics thing that's being reported on right now, and seems to be the newest wave of, how should I put this? Like the UFO topic is kind of geared
Terminology.
towards that. Yeah, it's a new terminology for an old thing. That's something that's been looked into forever.
Yeah.
As far as people that have had UAP encounters are believed to be connected consciously more to this. Like some people think those that have been exposed to it have the ability to attract them. You take someone like Chris Bledsoe is probably one of the best known cases of where it would appear someone who had a life altering experience with this phenomenon is suddenly connected to it on another level. So yeah, I do believe that cognitive testing is something they did to people that were affected by this, and people like Gary Nolan have been studying that exact topic for years now.
John?
Well, okay, because some of this I'm going to cover more in book 2. So, not trying to get away from one. One was to set up the public to understand where they're going with UAPs. Again, it's not like they're studying outer space. They're looking for signals. They're looking for civilizations out there. I think they've identified planets out there, Javi Loeb has, that are light years. I don't know how many light years away. If I'd say it wrong and people jump on me, but a long ways away, especially for our ability to get there. But they very well could be something biological like us. Okay. But what UAPs appear based on everything that I've involved with, meeting with Putoff, Green, Nolan, Kelleher, some of these other people, Eric Davis, is something a little bit different than looking out into the solar system to find other biological life forms. It's more having to do with an energy that's, it may involve consciousness, and it very well could be us from even the future. You can't totally argue that. It's a collective field of consciousness that comes into the human body or whatever. But I could say this without going too much into what's going to go forward, is I dealt with all these people. They wanted to study my brain. They wanted my DNA. They wanted to know everything physically and psychological about me. They were doing this on other people that have had encounters. I can only tell you what they told us was that they simply were trying to figure out at the point, the best read I got out of them was, why did we have the interactions? Did we have different abilities? The people that stand out there, what's the name of the guy now that just came out and claimed he has the same injury I do?
Jake Barber.
Okay. They're running. I want to be careful how I say this. I don't really trust them because they're acting like they can go down to an area and bring in this phenomenon. Okay. They could control it and all that. Well, if that was the case, they would not be allowed to do this. The government, whatever you think about our government, who's ever in charge, the one thing that they're really good at is weaponizing everything for power and control. Okay. So if these guys had those kind of capabilities, they would not be allowed to go down there and publicly display it. Now, they could do private stuff, maybe bring some outside investment in. This new administration seems to want to bring in private money into different things. But the point is that be real careful what you believe in. I mean, I can tell you that I do not consider myself a Chris Bledsoe or the Barber guy, but Toby is a witness to what happened at Skinwalker. It does seem to be like when I go into certain areas, weird things start to happen and things show up. And they clearly are looking at this from a perspective of weaponization. That's what we're laying out, to include the fact that there are all different kinds of weapons they can use with this, going what they've already used, what they're developing now for the future. And I mean, you just have to look at the physicist that's the lead in this, Hal Puthoff. What program did he run? It was a major program inside
Stargate.
Stargate, right?
Yes.
So,
And I kind of, not to interrupt, but
No.
like
Go
he
ahead.
said, talking about Skinwalker, it brings back to like the area near you were talking about. We know for a fact that the government has gone and mapped out these places where these certain energies or frequencies are. I mean, there's multiple ones. Skinwalker is just one example.
Mount Shasta is another one, right?
Marley Woods, that's
Yeah.
another one.
Sedona,
Arizona, yeah. So
they just did a piece on that. So Cold Cart did.
yeah.
So it shows you
Oh,
that they've been looking into this for a long time. And yeah, like John said, we went to Skinwalker and I probably saw some of the craziest things I've ever seen. But
can I tell you a theory that I have? And if it goes into your second book, you can just nod if you want. It's okay, but it's something that I've been thinking about for a while, and I keep going back to the old ufology guys like John Keel or Jacques Vallée, who talk about this phenomenon being able to meddle with our perception as humans. But John Keel has this concept of the super spectrum, which um, I think it has a connection to whatever is happening, for example, in your brain after having these experiences that allow you to interact more with these phenomena. And you're able to interact more with this super spectrum. And I think that's what's happening. And I found it very interesting that you guys talk about this concept of a new type of super soldier that is not necessarily engaging in kinetic activity, but it is engaging in other type of warfare. What can you tell us about that concept and how this has been developed over the years until now?
well, I mean, I think if you truly think about it, this is just from my opinion, what could be the ultimate weapon? You can take consciousness and put it in something. I mean, say you have a drone that's armed, you can have AI take it so far where it can determine whether it's going to shoot or not. If you get to the point where you can put a consciousness into that and have it go off and think on its own, to me, that's scary. That's kind of like the ultimate weapon, right?
Yep. John?
Well, okay, let's break it down. All right. This is stuff that's not conspiracy based. This is stuff that if you go out online and research, like DARPA, these different think tanks, these different agencies that are working on stuff, the Office of Net Assessment. We talk about a guy in there by the name of Andy Marshall that most people probably don't even know who he is, but he ran this office for decades. And Chuck DeCaro originally looked at Rendlesham, ended up working with him. So, and DeCaro, as soon as he investigated Rendlesham, went straight into Colonel Bearden, who ended up was saying we were behind the Soviets in a lot of this technology. And he was involved in a lot of this, was Marshall. And DeCaro's, if you look at the book, we lay out what he's done. What we lay out is not conspiracy based, guys. If you read the book, you'll see we cited and sourced it, his papers and stuff that he's wrote. There's a Marshall, all the different stuff that he worked on is there. Bearden's work is all there. It's in their own words and their own things. They were looking to the future. And when you talk about consciousness, one of the things that they're having a big problem with, and I think it's been forgotten now, and it's only been a few months, that all the big people that are involved in AI warned how it's dangerous to us. And it's because it thinks for itself. You create this program and it learns from everything, and it creates its own thought process and its own theories and how it's going to take care of things. And it may not be, its logical conclusion may not be exactly what's good for us, because you have the human factor in it where you have, your heart, your feelings and all that, where it's just like, well, I need to get from A to B, and whatever gets in my way is going to get destroyed. Well, that may not work out so well. So they clearly are, and it's coming out now. They're working on trying, and I think I just saw, don't have this. I have other things that I've looked at recently, but they actually said they're finding a way now to put consciousness into computers. So they're also now just wrote a paper they came out with. They're creating plasma shields for people, for soldiers, for equipment. The interesting thing was that was what Putoff was working on, and I think Greenwald just came out in the Army said that the Bisma or whatever they had didn't work the way they thought it would. But it's supposedly they're trying to create basically what Star Wars, Star Trek, and all that is. They're looking at creating, shields, bubbles, how to travel through space. Like Putoff's paper that got submitted as evidence during the congressional hearings is talking about warp drive and traveling through space in a time dilation bubble. Well,
Yeah.
that was 20 years ago, was just science fiction. It's not anymore.
No.
And not only that, but the computers and everything else and the AI technology, they can't control it. They've pretty much said that. And the only way they can control it is to somehow tie human consciousness into it.
Yeah, you're at the point where AI is refusing to delete itself when it's being told to.
Yeah. There's already a term that they're using that Dan Cleary from Others from Another Mother just released in one of his videos that he heard a lot over there at Contact in the Desert. And the term is synthetic sentience, which I found interesting. Think about what it means, though. It kind of scary, though, what we're talking about here. It's kind of,
Skynet.
yeah. And it's going to be talked about a lot.
But the problem is that if it's not talked about properly, and what I mean by properly is this book is not a conspiracy book. If you buy it and read it, you're going to understand what they've been doing with UAP technology forever. And one of the first places they found it was back during World War II. And what they learned, the radars and plasma weapons that the Germans had developed were causing these different effects that they started studying right away. And then they turned from there and they brought all those scientists from Germany to the United States. Russians got some of them. And they've expanded on this technology going forward and studying on this. Back in 1960, DeCaro talked about it to me, and I looked it up. They mapped the entire world, the United States Navy did, for all the ley lines, the energy fields, the sources, and everything else. So they've been looking at what UAP technology is for a long time. The big question is according to Project Condon, which we haven't talked about, and we talk a little bit about in this book, which is partly what helped me get my settlement from the government, was that first it said we were exposed to UAP radiation, which can cause injuries, but it also affects how you see it, the way you remember it, and the way it affects you in every different aspect. So the fact is they've been looking at UAPs for a long time, and they've been working on this. And the biggest problem they've got right now is what you said. It's creating its own. I don't call it human intelligence, but it's coming close to being able to think on its own. And it's just I have no idea how long they've been working on this, but my guess is whatever they tell us, go back another 2 decades. Is when they really started pushing hard on this, back when they first started looking at computers. But what really is really excelled this is the quantum stuff. That's really escalated this stuff. But what you can't have is, you're going to see this more and more, is you're going to have this conspiracy stuff come out. That's just crazy.
Yeah.
And it's not what we need. We need to understand what we're dealing with and what the possibilities are. Problem is, the people that know the best are the people inside industry and the government. And you think they're going to tell us? Probably not.
And the journalists and creators.
The journalists are clueless now.
But some of them are in league with these companies, though, because you're talking about big tech coming into the picture. I am almost 95% sure that some of these people are in league with them, and they're getting their information from them. And I think that is unethical.
But how do you understand? Okay, Pablo, how do you understand? You're just fed some information. Okay, how do you even know it's true or not? The thing is that I have a perspective. Toby's been looking at this for a long time. James Worrell has been involved. We go to papers, and then we go to physicists, and we go to people. And we can't guarantee we're getting 100% answer. But when you start digging deep, you have to understand. But you can't be a pawn for these industries and stuff. You just get fed some information and you go out there and sell it. That's not the truth. The truth is, what we used to have was investigative reporters. Chuck DeCaro was one of them. But where did he leave? He left CNN and he went to work for the government. And he still does. And how often is any industrial industry going to tell you the truth? Because if they tell you what's going on, that gives another company an insight on what they're doing, never mind the government. So they're just feeding you a line of garbage, is my opinion, most of the time.
And it's all about competition between companies. So you don't have investigative journalists, you have propagandists. That's what you
Yeah,
have.
that's why I smile. I don't really believe journalism's dead in my point of view. You have two sides. You have very little science anymore. As far as you have very little science. I mean, you would think by now, and this is what annoys me the most, is we have some scientists talking about this, but like when you do this political stuff, they have these panels, they have these experts, they talk to the death on it, but you never have anything going on with what we could be, where we're going with technology. Forget UAPs, just technology in general. Where do you turn to for legitimate, honest evaluation and what we're doing with technology? Who do we
These
turn to?
days, nobody, I don't think. But you said journalism is dead. I think it's dying, but I think it can still be saved, but it's going to be really difficult. That's what I think. It's my personal opinion as a journalist. But I do agree with you. It's really impossible these days to find a news outlet that is truly unbiased and truly objective and truly science based. It's nearly impossible. You can go to independent journalism, which is, I think, what is the driving force of what real journalism is today. But in UAP, it becomes impossible because it's really hard to tell who's actually telling you the truth and who's doing it with an agenda and just feeding you something to their benefit. It's impossible.
Well,
Well,
it's. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Toby.
we're also at a point in our society too where everything is about being the first. People get online for their news now. They check Twitter, they check Facebook, they check whatever. So, to John's point, a lot of the hard work that goes in to build up a story doesn't happen as often now because you
Yeah,
hear something and you automatically want to be the first person to put it out. And to me, that leads to a lot of the misinformation coming out because
yeah,
people are just firing from the hip without taking the time to check everything. And so that
yeah,
just further muddies the waters, in my opinion.
Well, it's
yep.
called sensationalism. That's what sells. I mean, if I wanted to go down, and I'm not saying that some of these people don't have certain abilities or not. I can't prove whether they do or not. But if I wanted to go out there and start pushing where I go into these areas, I had weird stuff happen in Sedona. I had weird stuff happen up at Skinwalker. They wouldn't even let us on Skinwalker. And the story we got was because I would influence the phenomenon. I'm just, I want to make this clear. This is not what Toby and I believe. This is what we were told. We
Yeah.
actually had permission to go on there from the owner. And then it went to the lead scientist there, and then they came back and they pulled it. But we went up there anyway, and we just were outside on the perimeter where we had stuff happen. But the story we got told, we tell them the story why we weren't allowed to go, what you were told why we weren't, I wasn't allowed to go on Skywatcher.
Okay, so let me kind of set the stage here because this didn't come from any of the people from the show that everyone's familiar with. We talked to someone that has worked the area for ages. I mean, a long, long time. Been on that property, been on Blind Frog, all the properties there, knows all the players. And yeah, we were told directly that the reason they did not want John out there is because he would have an effect on the phenomenon. And the fact that they thought basically he would either chase it away or be able to control it is that's what we were told, and I'm not saying any of that's true. I'm just saying that's what we were told by
What do you
someone.
believe is true now?
I I don't know. We got, like you said, we were supposed to go on, then communication broke off. They said it was my lack of planning that caused us to not be allowed on, which I don't agree with, but whatever. Water under the bridge. Uh, for some reason, and that's not the first time we try to get John on one of these properties. It doesn't happen, and I don't have a good explanation for why.
What about you, John?
Well, there's a couple factors that I feel are important in this.
Yeah,
Number one, I can't deny, and I'll talk a little bit about this in the second book, about some of the weird stuff that's happened. I mean, went out to an area in Sedona. Colcart just was there, and he talked to a couple of people that are less than honest about the stuff that goes on out there. That's where I'm going to leave it. The one particular individual basically got toasted years ago, and he's rise from the ashes. But I met with this one particular individual, and they were talking about all these areas up there, and there's security there and black ops and all this. I had a guy send me a message last night. They showed a picture of the radio, and they said it was special forces. It was actually a forest radio. So he showed me that. But this particular individual was really interested in the codes there was a spot that was supposed to be up in Sedona where weird stuff happened, or the codes, Penniston's codes. When I met with him, he brought me this book, and he started showing me some pictures. Well, he showed me some pictures from the surrounding area, including up there. There's a haunted mountain that goes between Sedona and Prescott, and I can't remember the name of the town now. But he showed me some pictures, but he just kept hammering away. There's guys in black all around. I said, well, how many times have you had these encounters? Numerous. So, well, where's there a picture? What? I go, how come you don't have a picture of one of these guys in black right now? Well, I go, dude, you claim these areas have them, and then you never give me a picture. I said, I ain't buying it. Okay. And number two, the truth of Sedona, and I can confirm this myself. I was in the Air Force for 27 years. There were two facilities in Arizona that were very strange. There was one out by the town of Maricopa, and it was marked as a NORAD site. And they had some kind of like towers behind it. You could see it over by satellite. They were like EM frequency towers. They were connected to a network worldwide. They called it a NORAD site that had something to do with the shuttle, but it was there years afterwards. The Air Force was in charge of security for it. Williams, when it was open, handled that. Luke had a facility up in the Sedona area out in the West End. So when Williams closed, Luke took both the site at out by Maricopa and the site in Sedona. I knew the guys that did the site security for it. There was some weird stuff that went on in these facilities. That's as much as I can tell you. So, and they were secret facilities that they were doing testing on frequencies. I also met somebody else that worked directly in the Stargate program for Put Off. And they were put there in Sedona. They lived up on this mountain out there. I forget what area out there, but it's on the west end. They had a house up there, and they had all kinds of EM frequency equipment. They were studying the EM frequencies in that area. But it takes it to the point where there's aliens everywhere and all this other stuff. He does all this stuff, and it's not true. It just, like the other lady says, she'll guarantee you to see a UFO. She tried to get me and my son to go out there to use us as advertisement for her tour. I could take nods and go out into the sky in Sedona, and I can see a UFO every night. But a lot of times, if you really research, it's the shuttle, or not the shuttle, but the space station or something else.
Or Starlink.
Now Starlink, but back when I was there, Starlink wasn't there. This was like 10 years ago. But you can make people believe they're seeing something that's a UFO. But the point being is there's something weird about Sedona. And I experienced a night out there that if Toby thought what happened up at Skinwalker was crazy, it would have blown your mind what happened. It was out by Bradshaw Ranch, which Bradshaw Ranch is a lot like Skinwalker. The government bought it, took it over from the Bradshaw family because there was weird stuff going on there. Then eventually they gave it back to them years later, and then they took it back again because stuff has been going on out there. But we had stuff flying all out in the sky, over us, around us, and everything else that night. So,
can you give me like a little tease of something that you may be able to share about what happened there?
Well, yeah, it happened. We went out there. I went out there with somebody else that is clearly involved in keeping track of what's going on in the area. And I was invited out there to go to this particular area. It was a hot spot. Okay. The other guy I was with was the assistant director and eventually became the director of MUFON for Sedona. But unfortunately now he's passed. But we went out there just to see what would happen. And so we were out there for a while. It was a chilly night for Arizona, not for like the Midwest. So we were out there probably 45 minutes or so, and nothing really happened. So this particular person said, well, we didn't do any preparation, which is what this group in Texas talks about. And there's some other organizations that talk about you do C5 or whatever it is. So you mentally prepare yourself to see something or have something happen. And so they said, well, we'll give it a few more minutes and we'll call it a night. And maybe we'll come back out here another night and we could do some meditation or something. Well, to be honest with you, I'm not really into meditation. But anyway, and this was the first time I was introduced to meditation involving this. Later, I was introduced to it even further. But it wasn't more than 5 minutes after that, everything went weird. They had a EM meter and a temperature meter. And within a matter of 5 minutes, the temperature dropped 10 degrees. But it wasn't like a cold front. It was like something was coming in. It was just a chill. And then the EM meter pegged. Now, when we were up there in Skinwalker, the EM meters pegged. Okay. I don't think anything got colder, did it, Toby? Though we had a weird storm come in, didn't we?
Yeah, the temperature changed. The wind completely changed from east to west or vice versa.
Yeah, and we had a storm come in that we weren't supposed to get. We actually had to call it because the storm came in. But anyway, so then in the distance, we could see blue lights out past this mountain range, out into the distance. So the person that I was with had some pretty infrared cameras and stuff like that. And I wish Toby and I knows what the camera is. We're going to, if we ever go back out in an area, we're going to use this camera. But what was blue lights when they took pictures of it was triangular objects. Okay. Oh. So these blue lights, what we could see looked like just blue lights, but they were actually on camera, on pictures were triangular objects coming towards us. We had one particular object that this person got on video that came over the top of us, was going counterclockwise with different coloring over us. And then there were blue lights flying around all around us. And this went on for almost an hour before it all stopped.
That was a long time.
So I don't want to sit there and say anything more than what happened. And Nolan and Kelleher wanted my DNA, and so did Putoff, so did Green. They wanted to study it, they wanted to study it. They told me, and I have the emails to prove it, that I have my DNA is different, which attracts this stuff in.
I have a question about that specifically, because do you think that your DNA may have changed after the experience at Rendlesham? Or do you think you've always had this DNA?
That was one of the things that they would not make clear. I do not have a straight answer for that. I don't know if by going out there and having the experience we had changed things, or if I always was born that way. Now, there are other things that went on that make it appear like it wasn't the experience that did it. I have the DNA that's possibly related to this. But here's where I'm standing my ground. And this is why they don't like to use me. Prove it. Prove it. Prove it. I need more proof than just one report from, it was a reputable lab out of Pennsylvania, top-notch lab. It was very expensive, the analysis they did on my DNA. Never mind the government analysis that was done twice. One was done through the study, the 100-person study, and when I had my heart surgery, they took my DNA and they took my tissue. So have
you tried different tests with different people?
You know how much that stuff costs?
Millions, I guess.
No, it's in the thousands. Like, for example, the test they did 3 different tests on myself and 2 other people that were involved with me. My particular test, now this was over a decade ago, was over $10,000. Okay. So I gave them the sample.
Yeah.
They gave me a chain of custody. I demanded it later because they held something back for me that I had somebody that understood DNA told me. They held the mutations. There's mutations in people's DNA. Well, mine got held back, and I forced them because they wanted to do another study on me. They wanted to do an MRI. They wanted to do the DNA study, and then they wanted to do a hypnotic study. Well, when I refused the MRI, they got my DNA anyway when they did my surgery. So I went ahead and went through with the others based on some other studies I wanted done. So I've got the reports, but I can't prove 100%. I need more than one time, basically I need to test done more than once before I trust it. Okay. Then you have, the fact that you have the MRI, which they're studying the brain, which the pineal gland and stuff has something to do with this. Right. So all I can tell you is they were clearly interested in me. They clearly have made statements that I have something unique, but I don't have the supporting evidence in my mind to go out there and say that. I'm not going to be like that guy down there in Texas. Come on out. I'll bring the aliens in for you. You know what I mean? Come on out. I definitely am different. I don't know that I am. They claim that I am, but there's not enough evidence to support it for my liking, to go out there and say that that's the fact. And then they've gotten caught with shady things, like the Bismo was presented as one way and now it's not. So I have a hard time, and that was from the time I met Green, Kelleher, and Nolan the first time. That's one of the things I said to him. I can give you samples and you can give me a report, but how do I know I can trust you what you tell me the report says?
That's hard. And I'm just going to tell you what I think, because I've been doing this investigation, that I don't think it's aliens. I think it's about us. Whatever is being hidden is about us. And this book helped me clarify that a little more. But I do think that, for example, there are people like who are born with a certain type of predisposition to have more tune into this phenomena. But I think everybody can get a chance to interact with it, but via a different experience, like traumatic experiences or near-death experiences, or like ego death after a psychedelic experience. That also triggers that. So I think, but I don't think that everybody is born right off the bat with those abilities. There are people that have a certain type of DNA that do have more attuned to this this phenomena. And I think you may be one of them. That's why they're so interested in you. I think, for example, Chris Bledsoe is one of them. Potentially and probably, maybe not, John Hutchinson too, because of the stuff that he was able to do. So I think that's where the story is going. The one that is actually true. And it has nothing to do with aliens from another planet. That's just my opinion. I don't know what you guys think.
Can I add something to that, though?
Yeah.
Okay. The night we went to Skinwalker, they knew we were there. How do I know for sure that whatever happened that night wasn't something they were working on, that stuff that they created themselves?
Yeah.
When you go down to Texas, if you're dumb enough to fall for their crap and go down there, which whatever, how do you know they're just not controlling it? They're not creating effects that make you think you're seeing something or there's something there. And not only that, but they're testing you. They're using you as a test subject because they want to see how you would respond and react to it. Okay. Yeah. The two times that set out to me was Rendlesham, but there is some evidence that maybe not on night one as much, but night three, that because what we saw on night one, that there may have been some stuff going on that when we went out there, they were testing on us. Okay. The Sedona one is the person that brought us out there. I don't think they were in with the government, but what if that was another case where they're bringing people out there that have had some kind of encounter, and then they're building up this hype that there's something more to them and there's something more to people out there than there is. So that is one of my biggest questions as a person that's experienced this stuff, that have seen evidence to support some of the stuff that you're saying and Toby said today, and that and our three books are going to cover. But to be honest, where do you go to get 100% clarity on this?
Avon.
It's kind of difficult though, but there's a lot of literature from other countries too that has been written throughout history. And I cover Dr. Greenberg quite a bit. He was onto something about us, about our brains, and about how we interact with the lattice of reality and the neuronal field, and how we collectively are constantly creating reality. But I think that people in the government that are have invited you guys there, they knew that you're capable of that, but they already know how to manipulate perception in many ways. It's not just like social media. What you guys talked about in the book about megahertz and frequencies, that also has to do with it. And some social media does deal in megahertz, depending on the messaging and the programming that they have. So I do think that that's what it's about, and I think that they know, and that's why they try to play with your perception and just potentially see how able you are and how developed you are. That's what I think. But I want to talk about that more and dig a little deeper into injuries, because you wrote an op-ed last week about that. That is also part in the book. I managed to identify the text, and I just want to ask you, because there are other military people that do have injuries from UAP, but they don't have the paper that you have that confirms it. What's that journey been like for you? If you want to talk about it a little bit, because right now that seems to be one of the few smoking guns that I know of that can confirm something specifically, and you're the only one who has it. So I want your perspective on that, John, and then Toby can also tell me what his experience has been like living with you with this and going through the journey with you.
Okay. Do you want me to go first on this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be
Second of all, this is where it cracks me up about everything that's gone on. There are two of us that have gotten a settlement for sure. I could guarantee there are two of us that got a settlement for that incident. I'm almost 99% sure Peniston did too. And I say that because when he went to the hearings with that Bassett did, I think it was the citizens' hearings, he said he did. He said in his own words, then he denied it later, that he was injured, he had heart issues, that he had other issues. The VA had acknowledged that he had an ear problem or equilibrium problem that was tied to this, okay? Which is, if you go into Nolan's work and what he talks about, is something that can affect you. So he said he had it, and then he backed off, but he is getting disability because he told Pat and I both that he was. So the point is, there's three of us at least that have gotten compensation for the incident. Peniston got it first, and I think that was part of the reason why I walked it back when it became a bigger issue, because wait a minute, why did he get it, and why did some of the rest of us not? Okay, so but going forward, there are two of us that were together on night 3, myself and Adrian Bustinza, went out there and had an encounter, and both of us are getting disability for it, top end disability for it, and getting treated for the injuries we got from it. There's a couple other people. One, in fact, I know that based on what Nolan said, what would cause you if you had an encounter with this phenomenon has these same type of issues, but they're not able to get it. They're finally listening to me and they're trying, but they deserve it. And anyone else in our incident that has any kind of these problems, which the government has a better idea, should be just taken care of. Never mind the fact that Green himself said there was over 100 people that they were doing a study on that should be taken care of. If they've identified 100 people that they're spending money on that were involved with UAPs, they should all be evaluated and taken care of medically. Never mind any of these other experiences. Green told Pat and I that Rendlesham slipped through the cracks. It accidentally got out there. There's a lot of other people and a lot of other incidents that have had encounters that have had injuries and issues that have not gone reported. So my point with the op-ed was this. When you go in the military, they have a system. Some people get mad that if we get injured, we get taken care of. It's no different than workman's comp. If you work for a company and you get injured, you're taken care of if it's, there's an injury when it comes down to the job. So any of us that go out there and do our job and something happens to us, we deserve to be taken care of, both medically and if we can't work or whatever, disability, the whole thing. Well, unfortunately, there's a whole secret world out there that it doesn't matter, even if it's just UAPs. If you're involved in something secret, it's like pulling teeth to get taken care of. McCain, before he got cancer and died, I met with him and he was going to start pushing the fact that there needs to be something out there, an agency that handles within the VA and the DOD, that if you're involved in something, they have the clearances to evaluate it and give you the treatment and disability if you need it. And you may be forced to sign an NDA, okay? But the thing is that still doesn't exist. And Congress keeps acting like they're out there to help everybody and stuff. They've done nothing. Even the fact that they claim that they gave us whistleblower protection, they didn't give us whistleblower protection.
Not as it should.
No, and deny that, but they haven't even subpoenaed the right people in. They haven't done anything other than anything of value that's possible value. They go behind closed doors and they walk out and won't say anything about it. How is that benefiting the American public, let alone the military people or police or first responders that may have to respond to something like this, or the civilian population? How is that helping them? How is that helping us? What, are we just there? I bet you money if any one of them had something happen to them or their family or their friends, they would have a different attitude and a change of heart on getting something done. And so, yeah, I wrote it. I'm upset with them. I'm tired of it. I'm tired of the games that they're playing. And stop bringing in these people that don't provide any proof. Provide some proof. Tell some people what you can tell them honestly about what's going on, and then provide some protection for the people that are going to have to deal with it.
Yeah. And Toby, you went to DC to try and talk to politicians about this. What was that like?
Here's where things get interesting. So in the months leading up to the trip, I called and emailed the offices of most of the reps that are on the the declassification of federal secrets task force. Normally these offices give you a response, even if it's just a canned email. I can show you my inbox. Not a single one of them responded. All I wanted to do was drop off some information or speak to someone about John and his case, because John is really trying right now to come forward with all this because he wants these other people to get help.
Yeah.
You have a task force that is said to be set up to do exactly that. Why will they not return calls, emails? You know, they can go on podcasts and do all this other stuff, but when I offer to straight up bring you evidence of something and something you can use this to help people, it's been crickets. And I really would like an answer for that, because like John said, this is very real. We're not out here saying, oh my God, UFOs zapped these people, please take care of them. We're saying these people were doing their duty to their country. They were injured and they're not being taken care of. They didn't know what they were going up against. Take John, for example, when he went out that night, he had no idea it would affect him the rest of his life. As he's always said, he was just doing his duty. So to me, yeah, the task force, they keep bringing people in to testify, to talk behind closed doors. They don't show any evidence whatsoever. So when I brought what I thought to me is probably the best case to help move this forward and get some answers, there has been no response. So your viewers, I would like to know what they think about that, because these people are constantly going on TV, they're in the news talking about, we're here to get the people the truth, we're here to fight for everybody. Well, we're trying to help you and you don't want it. So
it goes a little deeper. It goes a little deeper than that. There's a couple other interesting aspects. It was like, I don't know, what, 3 years ago now, Toby, that they wanted me to come up and speak with AARO, and they wanted to bring me to DC. They wanted me to meet with some congressional people. They wanted me to go to meet AARO. This particular guy that later in the second book I'll put out his name and stuff. He was involved as a aide through Rubio's group at the time that showed interest in this. That was the Intelligence Committee. He actually tried to look at some of the stuff for Rendlesham and stuff. He didn't have the clearance to look at it, is what he told us. But he still wanted me to come up to AARO and meet. But I'm in another predicament. I need a DD-4 214 for some stuff, personal business that I need to take care of. And I can't get a copy of my DD-214. And I'm back going through a congressional congressional office again, and it's been over 2 weeks, and I haven't heard crickets from them again about where my DD 214 is in. Because I went ahead and went through the Office of Records, and I called down there after I sent it about almost 3 weeks, and I got the same runaround that Kyle's office did when they wanted my medical records and some of my personnel records. And that's when they found out my stuff was classified, was the fact that they aren't where they belong. So here's the deal, okay? It's besides medically, there's things about that you may need in personal business or personal lives that you can't get access to either. You know what I mean? And they just, nothing ever gets done with this, you know? And it's, again, it doesn't just happen with quote unquote UFOs, UAPs. This goes on in all different kinds of things. When I testified at the citizens hearing, there was a older guy. He was like in his probably 70s, I think he was. He'd been a congressional, his district was DC. And his aide, he still had one of his aides that was working for him, at least part-time, came down afterwards and said they had the biggest issues, because most of the people in Congress don't even know about a classified records section and all this other stuff, was they had a huge issue with all that. Because guess why? Guess what fell under their purview? Their district, Langley. Oh. So they had all kinds of issues with guys and people that were getting injured and having health issues that couldn't get taken care of because everything they were involved in was classified. And what did they say about the Havana syndrome? There's people that can't get proper care and proper things because whatever went on down there is classified.
Yeah.
They need to take care of this.
Do you know if any of you know if there have been any injured people from these things that have passed away from the injuries?
Personally, I know of no one, but Green said, I think Green's words, and I don't remember exactly, but there was over 50% of the people that he knew had encounters that passed already.
Yeah.
Whoa. That's a high number.
I've heard similar things, but like John said, I've never been shown actual proof that it's true.
Well, here's another thing that's very interesting that didn't get much, didn't go very far, but it's factual. NAP confirmed it. They brought a special operations unit to Skinwalker, and they had an encounter. And they had injuries afterwards. And the phenomenon allegedly followed some of these people that were out there back to their home station. So there was all kinds of issues with that. And yet here we have a special operations unit. We're talking about Delta Force, Navy SEALs type of units. Went out there and got involved in some kind of encounter. One person claims there was an actual exchange, a weapons exchange. I can't confirm it, but something happened out there, and yet nothing's been done about that. That just kind of got swept under the rug.
I think that this injuries part of the interview is the most important for this interview, because I've already spoken to a couple more people who have been injured by these things, and they're also not finding any way to get this disability. So the fact that you wrote that op-ed on the Roswell Daily Record, I think it was a major step towards supporting this, in my opinion.
But nothing happened. Not a single congressional office responded back. The congressman that I'm dealing with in Illinois got sent some stuff, hasn't responded back.
I think people needed to hear from you like this, John, and you haven't done an interview in a long time, haven't you?
It's been quite a while. I did some stuff with Professor Simon. We were trying to lay out everything that involved UAPs, but I haven't done a direct interview. I think since you. I think the last interview I did was with you. So yeah.
So people needed to hear from you. Hopefully this has an effect, because I think it's important for people who are still suffering from this, who are veterans, and they're being ignored. And what you two guys are doing is very valuable, and one of the centerpieces of whatever this is. people need to be attended to that have suffered these injuries. And
Well,
that overclassification is a major issue, man.
That's the only thing I want to be involved with on all this. You can't fight City Hall, as they used to say, right? Yeah. You're not going to beat the government at this. They've been keeping secrets about a lot more than UAPs for a long time. And the thing that irritates me the most is when people like I'll give you a guy's name, straight up annoyed the heck out of me. Two of them from the Nimitz incidents, Favor and Kevin Day. They both clearly stated that the United States government would not have tested any kind of weapon systems on them when they were out there. We cited in this book 2 or 3 incidents where they had, and there's a lot more what they did, including MK Ultra, that went on that the government got busted for with, and then the CIA just allegedly destroyed all the evidence, and nothing happened to anybody that was involved in this. But they claimed that what happened, what they encountered in the sky and on radar, couldn't have been a test on their equipment. Well, it was the perfect time to do a test. They were down off of Catalina Island. There was new systems that were in sensors that were in play. None of the aircraft were armed or anything else. It was a perfect time to test the new systems, and it was the perfect area. Catalina Island has all kinds of stuff down there in technology and stuff. Never mind the other one. I think it was the Lincoln that was off the East Coast. That was down there where they work on stealth technology, which has all to do with plasmas and everything else. Their encounter on the East Coast was the same thing. Yet these guys continuously go on and say, there's no way the United States government would do any kind of testing or anything to their personnel. And what was interesting was the guy I met in D.C. that told me about radars and what to look for and helped me out a lot, his whole crew was dead. He was the only one that survived. And he was in remission from cancer. Yeah. So the point is that they do this all the time. They test it on military people, military equipment, and they test it on the public. And by golly, if they're not willing to actually admit what they're doing, they should at least have a way to bring people in and get them the care they need one way or another. We're at least hamsters, okay? I didn't volunteer to be a hamster and go out into the forest or any of the other stuff that's gone on since.
It's funny you mentioned the Lincoln because I already told Toby about this. I'm following a case from 2019 where there was a Tic Tac observed on the Lincoln. And they say that it was like stationary and there was a black helicopter close to it. And it was acting as if nothing was happening. Like it knew that the Tic Tac would be there. So that also adds to this being tests that they're just running. And people are confusing them for something else. Like, for example, Commander Fravor, who's on the record at the hearings saying that it's impossible that we have anything like that.
If I had $1 for every time I've heard that, I'd be retired. I'd be rich living in the Bahamas. The fact is, and I don't totally disagree with them totally for saying that at the beginning, at least. When I went out into that field, those 2 different nights I was out there, I walked out of there shaking my head. There was just no way that I'd seen anything like that in our inventory, or that what I saw I could believe we could actually have the ability to utilize, right? But then years later, when stuff started getting declassified and you started following the paper trail and different things that went on, you realized that, wait a minute, we actually did have those abilities. Like when Halt talked about those blue lights in the sky, and I saw them too. Those were probably plasmas, blue plasmas, and they were being controlled by lasers. Now, did you also notice that they just came out with the new Golden Dome? Because it was interesting. SDI was our era, was all being worked on right outside the back gate by Marconi and stuff that no one knew about. They thought Reagan started it. It actually started in the 70s or even earlier. But the Golden Dome now that they're supposedly Trump wants operational in 3 years, right? That all has to do with all kinds of different things, lasers, drones, and all that. But here's the other interesting thing is they just admitted that they used some of that technology to shoot down those 100 Iranian missiles that were launched. Do you remember how they shot all that weaponry? Not one or two got through, and the rest got to take it down. One of the things that I saw in the video that they showed on TV, you could see the targeting lasers and the plasmas being utilized to target this stuff and take them down. And what people don't understand is this is a lot cheaper than shooting $1 million missile to bring down a $100,000 Scud or whatever. These missiles, intercept missiles, are very expensive. All this new technology that they're working on right now is like pennies on the dollar compared to what the missile systems cost.
It really makes you think. It really makes you think how people are still fear mongering over nuclear weapons when they're developing stuff like this. It really makes you think, doesn't it?
Well, no one's doubting if a nuclear bomb somehow gets through and goes up, it ain't going to end well. But the point being is we're a lot farther advanced in technology than the public understands. And one of the things that you have to do is you have to test it. And you can't just do it in the desert out in the middle of nowhere where there's no one around. You have to test it against equipment, personnel, and even our computers and our sensors and stuff, And they're getting to the new level of technology that's all this stuff is going on. Just like those drones that were out there on the East Coast for 2 or 3 months and in Colorado, most likely that was our stuff being tested.
Yep, I agree. I completely agree. And it really pisses me off when I see talking heads saying, no, it's anomalous. No, it's a like from another planet or something. It's like,
well, they're not being dishonest too, because did you see what happened during the Pope? And they've shown some of these handheld weapons they're holding now. They're lasers and EM frequency weapons. They can bring down these drones when they want to.
Yeah.
And especially in a special event area, and like these Air Force bases, haven't been on one for a long time. I guarantee you saw what just happened in Russia to 40 of their bombers got taken out. I guarantee you our DOD has got some kind of system in place to keep our aircraft from getting taken out like that. I mean, and they're acting like they don't. Well, that's the other game. Well, we need a few more billion here, and stuff like that. So this is just a big game. And that's what we get back to when we first said with reporters and stuff, stop fear mongering.
Yeah.
Do your research, put it out there, not in sensationalism, but in facts. And if the people don't want to listen, they will when something big happens. You don't have to create this sensationalism. It's probably going to happen without you having to make something up that may or may not happen.
Do you guys think Age of Disclosure is going to be that fear mongering? It's aimed for that, or do you think it's going to be worth it and it's really going to show or present some real information? What do you think about that?
Going off all the reviews I read, it's just people talking.
Yeah.
I was invited to be involved and I refused. The fact is that I want to say this because I like to give credit where credit is due. 2017 New York Times article and some of the stuff they've done is pushed forward some of this. The public's more aware of it, but they've not been properly informed. And the fact is that, number one, these guys have no intentions of disclosure. They're running a game where they're trying to get more money involved, whether it's government or private money. Private money's coming in, but ultimately, what people don't understand, our deficit, if you take all the richest people in the world and combine their net worth, we can't even pay the interest on our deficit from what they're worth, right? The only people that can manufacture this stuff with help from private industry and private money is the government printing machines. So they've got to get a government, whether it's the United States, which always is the factor. We can't fall behind the Russians, the Chinese, or whatever. They've got to get the people that give out the contracts and the money, the want to give the money out and to take this weapon systems and move it forward over all the other weapon systems. A lot of them that work. Now, Carl used to say that every year when they got together for the budgets, they would give a certain amount for exotic and new technology, but the majority of the money was allotted for stuff that worked. Bullets, airplanes that flew, and all this other stuff. Well, the push now is we're advancing far enough, especially with AI and stuff, that there's going to be a lot more money needed in the exotic technologies going forward.
Yeah. I guess I want to close out with this because I thought this was very interesting. You guys mentioned platforms that may already exist. And you mentioned the black triangle craft that you saw at Skinwalker that were blue lights when you saw them, but the camera
No, that was
captured.
Sedona. Sedona.
Oh, Sedona. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
This is interesting to me. I want to hear what you think about this. Use rotating mercury plasma drives. What is that? If you guys can expand on that a little bit.
You have to go and yeah, I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to give it. We cited it in the book, but they're working on propulsion systems that some of them they've had for years and no one wanted to fund it, or they didn't have the computing ability to handle it. Now with the new quantum stuff they do, so you'd have to do research on that because I will not give it justice on exactly what it is, but it's real and it's there.
And the cognitive interface drones that respond to operator intent. This sounds an awful lot like what Skywatcher claims to be trying to do, but it's not exactly that, is it?
Toby, do you want to say anything?
No, they're saying that they're tapping into these craft, with their minds, whatever. This is more something that's been worked on for quite a while, is using the mind, power of the mind, consciousness to interact with different forms of systems. Basically, cognitive interface means that you're using your mind to control it, right? So, whereas an AI drone, like we talked about earlier, an AI drone is going to go off of, like John said, get from point A to point B, right? This is the objective. I'm going to accomplish it no matter what. When you're using cognitive interface and the user's intent, then you have more of a, like he said, it involves the mind, the critical thinking, feelings, whatever. So it's more, I guess you'd say, humanized. Instead of just sending off a murderous robot, now you've got one that can decide between right and wrong.
Okay. Wow.
It goes deeper. It goes deeper than that. Okay. The issues they have with the drones and stuff is the control. Like supposedly, and I say supposedly because what I read was they snuck these drones into Russia and they launched them from trucks close to these facilities. The issue they have with these drones is if you know the frequency they're operating on from the ground, you can knock them out by knocking the frequency, the connection between the ground and the satellite or whatever. Most of them now are programmed to return to base, but they don't do their mission. What they've done now is they've got these drones, and they admitted that in Ukraine, is they can hover and they can react to weapon systems and stuff. So they're self-teaching themselves. But the problem they run into is when they self-teach and they self-learn, that's kind of what probably the Nimitz and the other, I think it was the Lincoln again, I may be wrong, which aircraft carrier was off the East Coast. They're testing the systems and all that. Well, the problem is they don't necessarily do exactly what we want them to do. So what they're trying to do is either to control them from the ground by mind, like basically what Stargate was, or interface consciousness with the computer, the AI programming, and it will control the AI programming. I just watched an 88-minute movie last night that covered it. It was pretty interesting, where these aircraft, I think they said within a decade, very few aircraft will be manned anymore, or won't have to be manned. But the problem they have, again, is the AI still does what it wants to do, not necessarily what the mission is supposed to do. So the consciousness is to go in to the system and keep AI from completely taking over. Yeah. But unfortunately, what's leaking out is the AI wins. It overwhelms the consciousness.
It's a term I told you that was just floated out, synthetic sentience.
Yes, it overwhelms the consciousness.
Yeah.
But we're going forward with it.
And you guys mentioned the test sites that we're not surprised by any of them, really. These have been talked about for a while as potential places where these things happen. A lot of lore attached to it, potentially misinformation that I think also attached to them, but Groom Lake, Pine Gap, and Diego Garcia. So I wanted to close out with that, just to thank you guys for being here with me, and just to ask you, where can people find the book? Because I think it's just like a 2-hour read. It's accessible to anybody who wants to buy it. It's not like a really expensive book, and it's, I think, one of the best books I've read over the last year, and I've read like 50 already over a year. So thank you for that, and let me know.
Yeah, so you can get it on Amazon by searching our names or searching the title. I'm sure you can leave
I will.
a link in the description. And yeah, like John said, this is the first of 3 in the Rendlesham Revelation series. And it's setting the stage for where we've seen this has evolved, basically from, kind of starting with World War II onward. It's setting the stage for the next book, which I think this video is a great promo for, because John went into more detail than I thought he would. But the story, it's just going to get crazier. But again, we're not going to report on anything that we don't have proof of.
Yeah. And what I love about this is that you guys have documentation right at the end of the book. Everything you sourced is right there, so people can go check it out for themselves. You're not just saying stuff out of your ass, which I really appreciate. John, thank you so much, man, for what you're doing, and I hope we can do this again right after the book number 2 comes out. And I guess there's potentially a documentary also coming out. Is it,
Toby?
I don't know.
Well, there's several projects that are due between now and the end of the year. The second one, this first one set the table for what they've known about UAPs, how they're studying it, and where they're going with it. Okay, and who's been involved. This next one's going to go into great detail, the interest in me, what I've learned, and some of these different things that I've been involved with and projects, and what happened in the fields and everything else. The third book is going to go very deep into putting it all together and what weapon systems we have and how they're probably being utilized. So again, just I thank you for bringing us on. And folks, I'm not arguing with the past, because I do think UAPs dealt with the past. I think the Native Americans had a strong interest in myself and my son. I think it has to do with one aspect of, are we alone or not? Okay. And the one thing I'll stick with is the government's not going to give you disclosure. If you want disclosure, go find it for yourself, and be prepared to go places that you may not feel comfortable going. But the one thing you don't want to do is don't dive into conspiracies. There's enough of them. There's enough evidence out there to support what's going on and where it's going, and how to prepare for it.
Thank you so much, John. Thank you so much, Toby. You guys know what to do. I'll leave everything in the description. Subscribe and hit the like button. You know what to do. Let's talk again right after the second one, but let's stay in touch. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you, guys.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thanks for having us on.
Have a good one.
Yeah.
Have a good one.